changing the subject of simple formula with adamonlinetutoring. Here's the beginner questions, some of the easier questions that you're likely to find on this topic. In algebra, the subject of the formula is the variable that is expressed in terms of other variables. For example, in the formula a equals 3c minus 2, a is the subject, as this is equal to and expressed as 3c minus 2. Changing the subject means that we're rearranging the formula so that a different variable becomes the subject. So for this question, we'd like to make c the subject of the formula, so we'll need to rearrange it so that we have c equal to something else. The key rules for changing the subject of simple formula involves BIDMAS and inverse operations. If we want to work backwards to find out what c is equal to, we can first think about what's happened moving forwards using a function machine, where c is my input. The first thing that's happened to c moving forward using BIDMAS is that we've multiplied it by 3. I can represent this with an arrow, and above the arrow, write down the operation of multiplying by 3. Once we have 3c, the next thing we did on the right hand side was we subtracted 2, representing this operation with another arrow and putting minus 2. This gave us the output, which was the left hand side, the current subject, which is a. Now I can apply the inverse operations, starting with a, to work backwards and find c. The inverse of taking away 2 is adding 2, so a plus 2, and the inverse of multiplying by 3 is to divide by 3, which algebraically can be represented with a fraction below everything that's been completed so far, and by putting a 3 underneath, and this will equal c. Since I now have c equals, or something equal to c, I've now successfully managed to make c the subject. For the second question, I need to make x the subject of the formula, using a function machine to explain what's happened to x. The first thing I did was I cubed x, and secondly, I subtracted 5 to give me the other side of the equal sign, which is y. Starting with y and working backwards, I can add 5. The inverse of cubing is the cube root. The cube root will need to go around the whole expression that I have so far, so making sure we extend the line all the way across before putting a 3 for the third root, and this will be equal to my new subject, which is x. On to the intermediate questions with a slight increase in difficulty. They do quite like getting you to change the subject of scientific formula, such as SUVAT equations. V squared equals u squared plus 2as, and we're making a the subject. If we look around a, the first thing we've done is multiplied a by 2s. Rather than writing this as two separate operations of timesing by 2 and then timesing by s, we can represent this as one operation by timesing by 2s. Secondly, we added u squared to this, and this gave me v squared on the other side. Starting with v squared and applying the inverse, I can start by taking away u squared, and the inverse of multiplying by 2s would be to divide by 2s. Again, this can be kept as a product and treated as a division together. So dividing what we have currently by 2s will give me my new subject of a. For the second question, we're making b the subject. There's an additional operation to consider here. The first thing we've done to b working forwards using BIDMAS is we added 2 to it before dividing by 5. And then finally, for a third operation, square rooting all of this, which has given me the left-hand side of a. The order of operations is really important. Any different to this order, and we'll end up with the wrong answer when working backwards. The inverse operations are squaring, multiplying by 5, and then subtracting 2. So starting with a and squaring, I'll then need to multiply this by 5, which can go in front of the variable, to give me 5 lots of a squared, and taking away 2 before making it equal to my new subject of b. On to the advanced question, one of the trickier questions that you're likely to find on this topic. This question, again, just involves more operations, and we need to be careful with the order that we apply these inverse operations. We want to make x the subject. Working forwards using BIDMAS, indices comes before multiplication, so we squared x before multiplying by 4, and then dividing by 5, and then finally square rooting the whole expression so far. This was then equal to 4 lots of e. So starting with 4e and applying the inverse of square rooting is to square. A common mistake would just be to square like this, but this would be e squared and then multiplied by 4, whereas we wanted to do 4 lots of e and square this, so therefore we'll need to use a bracket. The inverse of dividing by 5 is to multiply by 5. This can be written in front of my bracket. Next, I'll be dividing by 4, represented using a fraction under the whole expression that I have so far. And then the inverse of squaring will be to square root. When square rooting, you'll have 2 solutions, one positive and one negative, before equating to my new subject of x. Here's a question that I've completed earlier. It appears as though I've made some mistakes. Pause the video and see if you can spot what they are before writing some corrections in the comments below.
Thanks for watching. If you found that video useful, don't forget to hit the like button and leave a comment. If you're struggling with topics or finding maths difficult, subscribe and turn on notifications to receive regular updates about new video tutorials and other useful content. You can visit and follow all of my socials by clicking the links in the description below.